Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid Butt. It's the last day of the week, but we have very interesting stories for you from Pakistan and across the globe. We'll begin with Pakistan becoming the first country, the second, in fact, country in the Islamic world and the 18th country across the world to manufacture cardiac stents. Prime Minister Imran Khan inaugurated the innovative health technology facility at the NUST this morning. To tell you a little bit about cardiac stents, they are used to treat narrowed or blocked coronary arteries. They can also be used to improve blood flow immediately following a heart attack. Our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, is about the recent attacks on security forces, and there have been two in which 20 security personnel have been martyred. 14 have been martyred in Ormara area of Gwadar district on Thursday, and on Wednesday 6 other people were also martyred in North Waziristan's tribal district following an IED blast. We'll be also talking about the security mechanism in the country and why TTP and other organizations are trying to destabilize Pakistan. Our third segment is about air pollution that has worsened the COVID-19 situation across the world, including this region as well, whether it be Pakistan, India, Nepal, or other countries in the region. We'll be talking about that as well, because especially in winter, the high pollution rates exacerbate the severity of diseases such as COVID-19. And then we'll be talking about United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization that is marking this day, that is October 16, every year as World Food Day. This year, the theme of the World Food Day is Grow, Nourish, Sustain Together. Our actions are our future. And of course, we will begin with Pakistan becoming the second country in the Islamic world and the 18th country in the entire world to produce cardiac stents locally. To talk more about that, we have a guest, but before that, let's watch this short report.
Heart diseases have become the leading cause of deaths in Pakistan, where according to the World Health Organization data, an alarming increase has been seen in deaths due to heart attacks, heart failures, and other cardiac ailments. According to health experts, Pakistan's population has one of the highest risk of coronary heart diseases in the world, where 30% to 40% of all these deaths are due to cardiovascular diseases. To reduce the expenditures on the treatment of heart diseases, an innovative health technology facility at NUST, Islamabad was inaugurated today by Prime Minister Imran Khan. The facility will be the first to locally manufacture cardiac stents. It would also make Pakistan the 18th country in the world to do so and second Muslim country after Turkey. Federal Minister for Science and Technology Fawad Chaudhry had said Pakistan will be taking another big step in medical technology with the inauguration of the facility.
Now, to talk more about the inauguration of this innovative health technology facility at the NUST, we've been joined by the rector of the NUST University, Lieutenant General retired Naveed Zaman. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us. And first of all, sir, congratulations on this inauguration today that was done by our Prime Minister, and of course Pakistan becoming the second Islamic country to produce this locally.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, indeed, it's a great day for Pakistan. And I think with our limited resources, becoming the 18th country in the world which is producing indigenous cardiac stents, that is a great achievement. And that is what actually the research objectives should be to overcome these societal problems. And I think we have our team led by Dr. Najabat. They have done a great job, and we feel every Pakistani should feel pride in this achievement.
Sir, tell us a little bit about how this whole thing started at the NUST. Who began the idea? Whose brainchild was it?
Actually, the main principal investigator of this project, Dr. Najabat, he had been working on it for quite some time. A couple of years. He had also worked in cardiac facilities in European countries. And then once we started off thinking of starting at NUST, so we then got a PC1 approved from the government. We are thankful to the Ministry of Development, also Ministry of Science and Technology, which actually helped us on that account. and it is about 300 million plus facility. So then it took a couple of 3-4 years where we got it we went through a very laborious process of getting it first lab tested from Germany. Then we carried out its animal testing from top of the line facility in Poland, which is one of the best from the cardiac testing point of view. So after that, then we went into the process of human testing. And actually, initially, there were apprehensions on that. As you can imagine that you see all these 7 decades, we had been importing American and European stents. And so therefore, you had to develop that belief, know that this is all, so you see, as good, if not better, than those tents. But Alhamdulillah, once the authorities were convinced, so then we had this human testing done in again 2 top facilities of Pakistan. One is the NICVD, National Institute of Cardiovascular Diseases in Karachi. Dr. Nadeem Rizvi was there. So, and also in Rawalpindi Institute of Cardiology, RIC. So that is how about a year or so it took for human testing. And mashallah, up till now we have around 60 patients in Pakistan who have been implanted these stents. And in fact, Prime Minister met 3 of them today, and he was very pleased to talk to them. And that is how and then we got into the process of getting it approved from DRAB. That took its time. We also then got it certified from a European Commission body, and we have got an ISO European Commission certification, mashallah, for this facility. And as per their words also, it is in fact better than some of the European facilities even.
Wonderful. So this is really wonderful news for a country like Pakistan, because Shehbaz Gill Saab, the Special Assistant on Political Communication to the Prime Minister, says that this is going to save us $8 billion annually. But as far as the production of these stents is concerned, how long does it take to produce these stents? Because there must be a lot of demand across the country and even in the region beyond Pakistan for such stents.
Yes, Omar, good question. Actually, we carried out our exercise once we were into this, and the approximate total estimated figure of annual stent consumption in Pakistan is around 40,000 stents. We will, inshallah, we have started our production. Inshallah, we would be doing about 12 to 15,000 stents to start with per year. So that caters for about 25-30% of the total demand. Now, what actually we would be looking at is to slowly expand this manufacturing, and also we would like the private industry to join us also in second phase. So hopefully, inshallah, I think industry would come up, because this is, you see, and this 40,000, interestingly, is only the ones being used. And there is a survey, detailed survey, that in countries like India and Pakistan, actually 70 to 80% of people suffering from cardiac diseases do not get the ultimate treatment because of non-affordability. So this 40,000, we are talking about that 20 to 30% of people who actually are getting it done. So as it becomes more affordable, which in our case, inshallah, it is, and this stent, which I said has been implanted in about 60 people, this is about 1/4 the price of one is available in the market. It's just 15,000 rupees, the bare metal stent. So as the actually usage increases, the numbers and demand would increase, and that is the time once, inshallah, the private industry also would join in. We would also jack up our production, and as you said, that is part one. So we have already applied for the CE certification, which is required for the export, and only 17 countries which are already producing, they are mostly European countries. So the entire Central Asia, Africa, there are, you see, swaths of, you see, globe where there's no indigenous production. So inshallah, we look forward to it that hopefully there would be a large number being exported also in phase two. We
Of
first
course,
want to
and
cover
that is
the
very important, sir, the export to different countries, because that makes Pakistan the 18th country around the world to produce such stents. But there's another factor associated with that as well, that is quality control, that whatever stents you produce should be up to the quality of the European or the American or the Asian standards. Which company are you collaborating with for quality control of these stents?
We are in collaboration with the German company, and this, you see, consideration was, you see, we also realized it right at the start that what he said that you see to start with there would be an apprehension whether you see a Pakistani produced tent is of that quality or not. So we carried out that quality control tests, and let me assure you mashallah, our stance, as I said earlier, if not better, they prove to be exactly as per the American and German stents being imported. And that is the reason, actually, this European Commission certification which we got, ISO certification, that was a very tough process, and they do not take a chance at all. So we, inshallah, will be constantly monitoring it also because we are also conscious of that. It is actually at the end of the day, you see, it's a life-saving device, and so therefore we would not like any, you see, lacuna in that. But rest assured, it has that requisite checks there. And let me also one thing tell you that you see, we have reversed engineered most of the machines which actually we imported from Germany. And again, at one of, just to give you one example, one of the testing machines of this on quality control, it was around 17,000 euros. The same which we produce exactly giving the same results was just 500 euros. So this is the capacity and capability of innovation in Pakistan. You see, and this is the amount of money we can save. So whatever private industry would now come in, inshallah, we will be giving them even machinery for producing this.
That is wonderful, sir, and really congratulations again for all this innovative work that your university has come up with, and congratulations to the entire team as well. Finally, sir, one last question. Is there any other thing that is also in the works, because this is a very innovative thing that has happened for Pakistan, but are there other things on the parallel that NUST is also doing with other teams in order to make Pakistan further, innovative or further involved in this whole scientific process across the world, and make Pakistan also one of the countries that makes other products available to its region on affordable prices?
Right, it's again a good question, Omar. This is one area, you see, where unfortunately Pakistan has been lagging behind, where you see in getting this academia industry collaboration stronger. That is the model on which the entire world, first the West and then the East, progressed. That universities are the best place for any research, from a needle to a tank, and you do research, industry gets connected, and then you see the products get refined. So we in fact embarked upon it about 2 years back. Once we did transferred our first technology product to the industry, it was a three-phase load balancer, where you could save 20% of domestic electricity. So we were told that you're the first university actually which has done it. So we were also surprised that after 7 decades, this is, how could we be the one? But that was a fact. And today, mashallah, we have transferred 33 of our products to industry. But coming back to this innovations, I would just like to also tell our viewers that NUST, mashallah, is the first university or first institution in Pakistan which actually has produced our own corona testing kit also. And that is it's again a very long process. Unfortunately, we talk of indigenous productions, but our bureaucratic you see, channels are so long. We produced it in February, before the onset of before the peak of Corona, and today is October, and it is still stuck up. It is the best testing kit available in the market. but somehow is not seeing the light of the day. And after taking out the profit of industry and the principal investigator's share, the test would just cost 900 rupees as compared
Oh.
to 7 to 8,000 rupees in the market. So this is the potential, and you see, we have all other imported kits. This is the first indigenous kit. So inshallah, we are just hoping to, you see, sort out some few remaining issues, and inshallah, it will be in the market soon because Corona is here to stay. So hopefully, Pakistanis will benefit out of that. And then within this facility, in fact, stents we just talked in general while explaining the cardiac devices. Actually, it is two qualities: bare metal stent. Then we have the drug-eluting stents, and we have already started working on the third generation of stents, which the Western world is also going on, which actually gets dissolved in the body. So that is the top of the line, and inshallah, hopefully by the end of next year, we hope to do that also. We have also developed a very good ventilator. In fact, the Prime Minister also was pleased to see that today. And so there are, other than cardiac stents, there are other stents also in the body which actually are used. Then there are catheters. The catheter is actually the that wire through which the stent is you see transplanted in the body. So those are again top of the line. Those in fact those catheters have already we have already got an order from Germany for those catheters which have been produced here. So inshallah there will be a whole range of products as inshallah we go along, and inshallah we'll keep giving good news to Pakistan.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
congratulations again for this innovative product that you've introduced in Pakistan that will help so many thousands of people who could not afford the other products that were imported from other countries. And as you have just told me, there are so many other products that will be coming up very soon from the same team that manufacture the stents. So all the best to you, sir. All the best to your team, sir, and congratulations again, sir. That was a rector of the NUST University, Lieutenant General retired Naveed Zaman, talking to us. He was telling us about the cardiac stents that have been produced. He said that already there are a number of patients that have had those stents implanted in their bodies, and the Prime Minister today met with 3 of those patients. He said those tests were successfully, talked about the different phases of the testing of those stents. He also talked about the quality certification of those stents that has been done in collaboration with the Germany. He also said that the machine that produces these stents also now is being made in Pakistan at a considerably lesser price than that in Europe. And he talked about all the other products that the NUST University is also working in order to come up with. He talked about the Corona kit that he said had been developed in February, but due to some glitches hasn't yet come to the market. But he said that we produce in the month of February, and he's also working on different kinds of stents. He's working on catheters and so many other products that we need to be proud of as Pakistanis, because nevertheless NUST is a Pakistani university and we cannot be left behind when it comes to scientific innovation, and the NUST is proof of that. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, is about the recent attacks on the security forces. 20 security personnel have been martyred in the last few days, 14 on Thursday, 6 on Wednesday. On Thursday, that happened in Ormara in Gwadar district, and on Wednesday it happened in the tribal areas of North Waziristan. Wednesday evening, that was an IED attack. And of course, the TTP has claimed to be behind one of the attack, and Baloch militants have claimed to be behind the other attack. Why is this happening? Why this destabilization, and why now? To talk about that, we've been joined by Brigadier retired Amjad Ali Saab. He is a senior analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Brigadier Saab, why now? Why is the TTP getting all ready to bring out another phase of so-called attacks that we've been seeing in the last couple of months? Is this because Pakistan is slowly and steadily stabilizing?
Yes, Umar, thank you very much, first of all. You see, before we just carry out the analysis of all this, let's carry out the SWOT analysis of both the countries, India and Pakistan. That is the strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. The reason is that in last 2 years, after these 2 new governments in India and Pakistan, many changes have occurred. And Pakistan Army, as you know, and the armed forces, they have very successfully, they have been able to suppress the terrorism and not only suppress the terrorism as one whole. They have been successful in uprooting the terrorism from the country. Now, these things are happening because of the certain reasons that what Pakistan is doing, if we carry out their analysis, then the strength of Pakistan presently is that we are at the now correct strategic directions towards the progress and prosperity, and CPAC is the hallmark in that. And secondly, if you know that we have been very successful in fencing our western border, that has become a thorn in the neck of the Indians. That was the major place from where they could carry out the terrorist attack. Then the third and the most important strength which we had is that we have been successful in handling the pandemic, where our country has been have been appreciated at international level. Presently, we have our dedicated foreign minister, and our successful foreign policy has always been very successful in last 2 years, and now they have been successful in opening the eyes of the international community as far as the brutalities which are being carried out in India, in Kashmir, and in the other parts of the India. Our weaknesses, of course, if we analyze it, is a bit of political instability, a bit of inflation, and that inflation is because of the reasons which is happening all around the world in the region. And the third, I personally feel it's a bit of reason why we are why that became our weakness is that there are certain incidents which are being taken place in the region. On the other hand, I personally feel in last 2 years, India has gone much below these standards as far as their economy is concerned, their law and order situation is concerned, their COVID-19 situation is concerned. And the biggest problem for them now in the region is a big chunk of land that is Kashmir, which has become a problem for the Modi government. Now, these are the last disparate attacks which are being carried out by the Indian, with those cronies which do exist within our own country, and they try to do that. And I think there is nothing to worry about it. Our security forces are very well geared up.
Brigadier Saab, I love the analysis that you've just given me, because it really opens up the eyes on the strengths, the weaknesses of both countries, and all the idea behind what is happening now, why it is happening, and how it is happening. But sir, as far as the Indian involvement in all of these attacks is concerned, whether it be the Brass, the Baloch, Raji, Ajoy, Sangar that has claimed the attack in Ormara, or the TTP that has claimed the attack in the North Waziristan tribal district, there is a direct or indirect hand of India. How much does India want Pakistan more to be destabilized? We have Kulbhushan Yadav, who was also arrested from Balochistan, if you remember very well, sir. And we have who admitted to so many activities that the RAW was perpetrating in different areas of Pakistan, especially in Balochistan. And we've had the statements coming from the Indian different political and army leaders as well about their involvement in Balochistan and how they want to continue destabilizing Balochistan is concerned. What is your take on that?
Yes, they are doing a lot. It's not only Kulbhushan who has admitted before everybody, or before the media, before the international forum. It's one of their pseudo journalists that Major Saab is also trying to do a lot of, he's trying to create a lot of mess on media and sitting in every second program and admitting that he has also been doing the same thing. And wherever we have, we have had laid our hand on the end-based operations, and we caught the terrorists from within Balochistan or Sindh or anywhere in Pakistan. Some of the other, their links were with India. And there is absolutely no, we have no two opinions about this, that India is not directly, indirectly, but it is overtly or covertly involved in the terrorism in the country. Why they want to stabilize? The only problem with India is the CPAC. And the good thing is that they have been brutally thrown out of Chabahar also, from where they wanted to offset whatever the gains we could have gotten from Gwadar. So that is the reason that became. And now whatever is going on inside the India, Modi government doesn't want that everything, that all the blame is thrown to them. They always make Pakistan as a scapegoat. And such type of terrorist attack, these are the acts of pure cowardice and they will not be taken, inshallah. And security forces are handling it very well.
Sir, as far as security forces are concerned and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is concerned as well, various militant groups recently also announced their merger with the TTP to continue their fight, so-called, or their launching of attacks on the security forces under the umbrella of the TTP. How do you see this merger, sir, and what can be done to thwart this merger or thwart the TTP once and for all?
I think we should be thankful to Almighty Allah, and we should be thankful to the armed forces, which is the center of gravity of this country, and center of gravity of the armed forces is that elite agency we have. And they are very closely keeping an eye on all the activities which are being taken place in the garb of terrorism in the region, and especially in our country. We are just waiting now for the conclusive, end to the withdrawal of the forces from Afghanistan and the setup of a new government, which will be a broad ethnic-based government that will be along with the Taliban. And the Afghan Taliban, as far as they are concerned, they have just laid off their hand from the TTP. These are the desperate attempts of small little terrorist groups which are being carried out here and there in bits and pieces. And they will not make much of the difference. I'm sure that the things are quite under control. And as usual, those who are enemies of the Pakistan and those who are people of Pakistan, including India and all other forces, non-state actors, those who are within the country, they'll be flabbergasted, inshallah, very soon.
Brigadier Amjad Ali, how important is the collaboration between Pakistan and Afghanistan also to cut down on TTP or restrict their movement?
Yes, it is very important because most of the terrorist activities and terrorist attacks which were being carried out within Pakistan and within the borders of Pakistan, those were mostly from Afghanistan. And if you remember, in past 2 years ago, India had a lot of influence in Afghanistan. And what was the reason of having that influence? It was just to engage Pakistan on both the fronts. And they wanted to destabilize Pakistan through these covert actions of terrorism from Afghanistan side. As the sense has prevailed everywhere now in the region, and we're very grateful and thankful to Mr. Abdul Ghani and Abdullah and the Taliban leadership that they are on one page and they are ready to collaborate with the Pakistan and to be, a bit more candid. They are more tilted towards Pakistan and they are trying to seek guidance from Pakistan. And this is what the ex-Taliban representative in Pakistan, who in a recent interview said that now we have come to know the diplomatic norms and we know what to do with our neighbors and how to go about and how to be internationally, how to be recognized as, as a state, how to be recognized as a peace-loving country.
All right, sir. And finally, sir, these Baloch insurgent movements that have been gaining momentum in the past and in the present as well, what needs to be also done to cut their arms and legs and their roots?
The use of force, wherever such type of insurgencies or the terrorist activities in the past we have seen, that use of force is not, is the solution to every problem. It is the VAM activities, win hearts and minds of the people. These VAM activities which are being carried out in Balochistan by the government of Balochistan, by the federal government and by the armed forces, these are just a few disgruntled people, few disgruntled, staggered groups here and there in Afghanistan, in Balochistan, who are trying to do this. As a whole, the complete Balochistan, and they have outrightly, you must have seen a lot of clippings on the social media, those who are the leaders of the Balochistan warlords or their tribal lords, they have rejected and they have, thrown away this dirty narrative of India to separate Balochistan or there is something happening in Balochistan. We are on board, and I'm sure our government is doing pretty good things in there, and Pakistan Army is all out to help the people of Balochistan and to elevate the poverty level, and in order to ensure that they get at par with the other provinces of the Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, to have given us the time
Thank you, my pleasure.
and such a detailed analysis of the backdrop of all of what is happening and has happened in Pakistan as far as these attacks on the security forces that have been happening of late and that have gained momentum of late in Pakistan is concerned. So of course our armed forces are there, and thank God for the armed forces of Pakistan and for the two major offensives that we've had in the major of course movements that we had by the army, due to which we lost a number of people, but at the same time we also got rid of the terrorist and extremist elements from Pakistan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, air pollution, COVID-19, both of these are interlinked, because what happens when the air gets polluted is that the viruses, especially those of the pandemic, that is COVID-19, gets the environment that it needs to replicate, and thus the spread of the disease increases even more. As winter is approaching and the air pollution in countries including Pakistan, India, Nepal also increases due to different factors, that exacerbates the condition. To talk more about that, we've been joined by Javed Bhutta Sahab, he's infectious diseases consultant. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Dr. Saab, as winter begins in Pakistan and other regions, other countries of the region, how much does air pollution contribute to the further spread of diseases such as this pandemic?
Yes, thank you very much for allowing me to talk about this topic of air pollution. Before we really jump into the actual conclusion, let me give you a little background that there's the two things we have to understand. The air pollution causes transmission versus air pollution is a reason for severe COVID. You can understand that air pollution can trigger some allergic reactions, inflammation in the people with a high level of the air pollution or particulate matter, which we talk about. This can predispose a lung which has already been damaged by some inflammation or allergies, and whenever the COVID attacks that lung, it can predispose that person to have a severe type of a COVID infection. Now, again, we're talking about air pollution predisposes a person to get a relatively more severe COVID. Now, the other aspect of the talk that you have mentioned, that does the air pollution affect the transmission? Again, there are studies, there are some vague studies from Italy who has tried to prove that air pollution can spread the bacteria, viruses, or even some fungi, their spores to a distant level. And when a person inhales these air pollution dust particles, theoretically they're talking about they can inhale the virus, and it can cause the pneumonia with the COVID. But again, this is one of the preliminary study which is talking about, but scientifically we have not really reached to the conclusion about this thing. It really needs some scientific way of proof that does the virus stays viable in the dust particles or air pollution or the carbon particles, because sometimes people talk about the air pollution coming from burning coal or burning woods in the remote rural areas.
But Dr. Bhutta, there's another thing as well, as far as this burning of different items is concerned. You know that farmers in India set rice and wheat straw on fire to clear their crops, to clear their fields for the wheat crop, and that is what causes a lot of air pollution in these months, not only in India but also in Pakistan, because the air travels across India into Pakistan. Is that one of the leading factors as well in your point of view? And if so, what can be an alternative?
Again, my thing is that, yes, based on what study we have, I think this is only one or two studies so far talking about spreading of viruses by the air pollution. But is it proven yet scientifically? We are not sure. Again, I said to you that survival of this virus on the dust particle or carbon particle, which comes from the combustion of coal or wood, can spread this. We are early to say a confirmed by confirmation that it's possible. But yes, overall air pollution does increase the chance of COVID to be a severe case, and it can. Let me give you a little background. What are the aerosols? Aerosols are basically when someone coughs or sneezes. These are the small droplets that can hang in the air. That is called aerosol. One is a droplet. Droplet means it's a relatively bigger, small water drops that cannot travel farther than 3 or 6 feet. That is over social distance. But the aerosols are something that they can harbor a virus and then they can stay in the air. If someone coughs, sneezes, yes, that particular droplet or small micro droplet which generates the aerosols can travel and can infect the people. Now, can we apply this theory of these viruses being on the droplets if they can survive on the dust particle or the carbon particles from the combustion? Again, this is a study from Italy, what we are looking at, but I think we still need to have some scientific aspects to confirm this theory. Overall,
all right. And finally, Dr. Bhutta, very short answer on my last question is that COVID-19 is not the only disease that is due to air pollution. There are so many other diseases of the lungs, of the heart that are caused by air pollution. What are the immediate immediate measures that need to be taken by the government, by the agencies, by the NGOs in order to facilitate or remove the effects, these harmful effects of air pollution?
Yes, first of all, like that you are doing and we are doing, creating the awareness among the people, among the normal person in the remote areas that air pollution is harmful. There is no question about it. Now, what we can do to cut down the air pollution? Every person, first of all, on an individual basis, has to be responsible, has to participate, has to stand with your organization or your country or your government that air pollution has to be minimized. If you are burning the woods to create the heat, especially the winter is hitting us, you have to be careful, minimize your woods burning. That will really affect the air pollution. Try to be on local areas, on yourself, to try to minimize. On the other hand, there are governmental measures being taken, but again, this is a pollution which cannot be contained by anyone. It can spread from region to region, area to area. You cannot hold the air in any place. So it is, yes, responsibility from the government side, from the bigger areas of air pollution like your industries, or especially in the Punjab area, you can see there's a combustion units for the bricks. These are one of the biggest sources for air pollution. So we have to really have some alternate ways to do so. We cannot just shut down those things, but we should have some alternate ways to micro-tune the reasons why we're having the air pollution. Again, we have cars. We need to look at the cars also. So it's
exactly.
Not a
All the reasons behind pollution need to be catered to and need to be looked upon, and public-private partnership is very important in order to eliminate or reduce the effects of air pollution. Thank you very much, Dr. Javed Bhutta, to have given us your point of view as far as the link between air pollution and pandemics such as COVID-19 is concerned, which he says is for the moment very theoretical, but a lot of studies going on in Italy as far as the implementation of it in practical terms is concerned. But nevertheless, air pollution is disastrous as far as health is concerned. So we need to come together to take remedial measures as far as eliminating air pollution in one way or the other, especially in this South Asian region is concerned, whether it be Pakistan, India, Nepal, or so many other countries where it is prevalent. And now finally, ladies and gentlemen, United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, also known as the FAO, marks this day, that is October 16, every year as the World Food Day. This year, the theme is Grow, Nourish, Sustain Together. Our actions are our future. More in this report.
كان والدي دائم الابتسام وكان يعمل راعيا للماشية. لقد علمني أن الغذاء هو سبيل السعادة.
Porque los caminos que recorremos se entrelazan, dando vida a una infinita variedad de historias.
Les poissons que je pêche chaque jour, on ne les trouve que dans ces eaux.
我们提供粮食，滋养生命。
E noi dobbiamo nutrire il mondo.
It's time to take action.
We all have a role to play.
Давайте добьемся лучшего в жизни и в обществе повсюду.
We need a food system that sustains lives, the planet, and protects its workers.
لأن مصيرنا واحد، أفعالنا هي مستقبلنا.
World Food Day calls for action across sectors to make healthy and sustainable diets accessible and affordable to everyone. Over the years, Pakistan has become a food surplus country and a major producer of wheat, which it distributes to needy populations through various mechanisms. But in the last 2 decades, Pakistan has experienced many natural disasters such as heavy rains, floods, earthquakes, and long periods of drought causing hunger in the country.
World Food Day is a very important day to be able to ensure that the world understands the gravity of the problem, to bring nations together, to bring people, bring communities together in order to be able to work and address those needs.
One of the advantages of the country is that it still has a large proportion of its economy based on agricultural systems, and these systems can be improved, innovated to allow more diverse food to be produced and therefore also to improve self-consumption.
There is a lot of work needs to be done to ensure provision of food to every Pakistani, as in the 2020 Global Hunger Index. Pakistan was ranked 88th out of 107 countries with a score of 24.6. The Pakistan Bureau of Statistics has released the key findings of the Household Integrated Economic Survey 2018-19. It revealed that 16% of the population is experiencing moderate or severe food insecurity.
Our role is to develop technologies and bring knowledge, international knowledge, coordinate with the international system, bring technologies and then develop those technologies for the farming community of Pakistan.
The country has to really stand up on a World Food Day with all the main stakeholders and make the living conditions of the people that make food available to us a beautiful one. We have to ensure that their income level increases, they come out of the poverty.
Government of Pakistan has started various programs in collaboration with different national and international agencies to build capacity at national and provincial levels to develop multi-sectorial policies and strategies fully aligned with the scaling up nutrition approach, partner on research initiatives in the area of food security through cash-based welfare programs, and provide expertise on disaster risk reduction, healthy and emergency preparedness and response. Shabbir Ahmed Wagra, PTV World, Islamabad.
We need to work collectively as a nation, as a society, in order to not only celebrate those heroes who are producing food for us, because nevertheless Pakistan is an agriculture-based country, but also, as our report says, to make implementation of such procedures that make food secure, that makes food safe for all of us to eat, that makes food insecurity also a thing of the past. This is what nations like Pakistan need to strive for. This is what nations like Pakistan are doing in order to make Pakistan a better place to live in. With that, we come to an end of this episode of Newsroom, and also this week's episodes of Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday with new stories that matter from Pakistan and across the globe. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.